Fest at 9 this Friday, the 8th of August 2025. Strengthening ties. President and Prime Minister meet visiting Australian Governor-General to strengthen bilateral ties. Discuss expanding cooperation in key sectors. Early departures. Prime Minister highlights alarming trend in Sri Lanka's education system, revealing that around 20,000 students drop out of schools annually. Space controversy. Supreme SAT confirms that no government funds were used for Rohitha Rajapaksa's satellite project, dismisses criticism against the project as uninformed.
This is Derana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Tatya Aranayake, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. Australian Governor-General Sam Mostyn, who is on a 3-day official visit to Sri Lanka aimed at strengthening bilateral ties, participated in high-level meetings with President Anura Dissanayake and Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. Both Sri Lanka and Australia reaffirmed their long-standing friendship and discussed expanding cooperation in key areas such as the economy, education, defence and gender equality.
Australian Governor-General Sam Mostyn is on a 3-day official visit to Sri Lanka at the invitation of President Anura Dissanayake. Her visit marks a significant step in strengthening the more than 75-year-long friendship between the two nations. Governor-General Mostyn met with President Dissanayake at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday, where the two leaders held in-depth bilateral discussions focused on expanding cooperation in economic development, education, defence, tourism and maritime affairs. President Dissanayake expressed appreciation for Australia's support during past crises, including the 2004 tsunami and Sri Lanka's recent economic downturn. He also highlighted Sri Lanka's readiness to welcome Australian investors, noting the favourable conditions created under his leadership. Governor-General Mostyn reaffirmed Australia's commitment to supporting Sri Lanka's development journey and praised the President's decisive leadership. She expressed particular interest in further assisting Sri Lanka's economic recovery and expanding collaboration in vocational training and employment sectors, in which Australia has become a hub for many Sri Lankans. Additionally, the Governor-General paid a courtesy call on Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya at Temple Trees. Discussions centred on deepening political, economic and educational ties as well as strengthening cooperation in sports. Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya shared updates on ongoing education reforms, while Governor-General Mostyn spoke about Australia's education model and expressed interest in closer partnerships in this field. Both leaders also engaged in dialogue on promoting women's participation and leadership in politics, affirming a shared commitment to gender equality. Furthermore, the Governor-General met with the Mayor of Colombo, engaging in discussions on shared national challenges and women's leadership. They later reunited at the Commonwealth War Memorial to honour fallen Australian service members.
Two unidentified assailants opened fire at a group of youths last night in Burala, killing one and injuring 4 others. Police suspect that the shooting was carried out as a part of a conflict between rival drug traffickers.
A shooting took place at Sirisara Uyana Stadium in Sahaspura, Burala at around 8:40 p.m. last night, targeting a group of youths. 2 unidentified individuals who arrived on a motorcycle opened fire at the group and fled the scene. The suspects had used a T-56 assault rifle and according to the police, around 26 rounds had been fired. 5 individuals who sustained injuries were promptly admitted to the Colombo National Hospital. A 23-year-old individual named Suresh Madhushan, a resident of Kalaniya, succumbed to his injuries today. According to police sources, the deceased is a part of the drug cartel of the underworld figure known by alias Kudu Chatu and was recently released following a stint in prison for drug trafficking. The other individuals who sustained injuries are all reportedly residents of the Sirisara Uyana area and are aged between 21 and 23. Police said the group had arrived at the stadium to prepare for a cricket tournament scheduled for today, which was organised by the brother of Kudu Chatu, who is currently abroad. Police suspect the shooting was plotted by an underworld operator known by alias Kudu Duminda. They added that the motorcycle on which the assailant arrived has already been identified. Several teams of the Burala Police and the Colombo South Divisional Crime Investigation Bureau have been deployed to probe the incident.
හොඳම ෆෝන් එකක් ගන්න. ළඟම අපාන්ස් එකට යන්න.
Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, drawing attention to an alarming trend in Sri Lanka's education system, revealed that around 20,000 students drop out of schools every year. She made these remarks during a recent discussion with Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, regarding the upcoming education reforms.
Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, met with Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya yesterday to discuss the education reforms that are scheduled to be implemented next year.
Technological knowledge, even things like plumbing, electricity, wiring, practical things, they can earn money because the way things are happening tomorrow we might have to get these skills from other countries. Maybe they ask from India to send us the workers. Everybody wants to have a white collar job. There is a dearth of people who are technically qualified to handle certain things. So identifying the capacity of the child to engage in a certain trade is also important for his contribution to the nation.
We have two huge problems. One is that we are finding children dropping out of the school system. We have 300,000 children entering the system. Only about 40,000 go into our state universities. Another 30,000 go into private education or go abroad. Still there's 150,000 more that we have to account for. That's a big issue. What happens to those who are not that everyone has to go in higher education, but they have to leave school with some skill. This ministry survey that was done recently showed that 20,000 children drop out of school every year, completely drop out. So that's 20,000 of that 20,000, say 5,000 get into some antisocial activity. That's enough to really damage a society.
Sri Lankan satellite operator SupremeSat confirms that no government funds were used to launch the controversial satellite said to have been launched with the involvement of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's son Rohitha Rajapaksa, and that the satellite remains in orbit. Releasing a statement in response to recent public discourse on the matter, the company rejects criticism against the project, which it claims were made by individuals lacking necessary technical understanding.
The controversial satellite project, believed to have been launched by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's son Rohitha Rajapaksa, has drawn criticism from several parties over the years, accusing the project of misusing public funds. However, in Parliament last Wednesday, in response to a question raised by SLPP MP D.V. Chanaka, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya revealed that no government funds have been invested in the project, but that the country has instead received a financial return from it.
According to the investment application submitted by the company, the Sri Lankan government has not invested any funds in the project.
First of all, I would like to thank the Prime Minister for countering one of the hardest blows to the country's investors. Most people refer to this satellite as Chichi's rocket. It was claimed that Sri Lanka lost $300 million owing to this investment.
However, Minister Wasantha Samarasinghe asserted in Parliament yesterday that the Prime Minister had been misinformed and added that the whereabouts of the satellite in question are still unclear.
There is an error in the statistics documented in the answer sheet which the Prime Minister received. SupremeSat asserts that it had 12 billion in its accounts from 2013 to 2014. But surprisingly, that amount has disappeared from their accounts from 2014 to 2015. The satellite is nowhere to be found. Although the opposition came here to show us the path to the satellite, now it is we who are showing them that path.
In response to the continued public discourse surrounding the matter, Sri Lankan satellite operator SupremeSat released a statement today asserting that it welcomes the long-awaited public acknowledgement of the satellite project after 13 years. The statement claims that politically motivated narratives sought to deny the facts of the matter for over a decade. It asserts that the SupremeSat satellite was launched successfully and that no government funds were used for the project. The statement clarifies that the satellite remains in orbit at 87.5 degrees east, precisely where it was positioned upon launch. The company condemned unfounded statements regarding the project and noted that discussions on companies' accounts conducted without their participation are misleading when driven by those lacking the operational insight necessary to comment on a globally integrated business.
Sarvajanabal leader parliamentarian Dilip Jayawira expresses concern that Sri Lanka is becoming a weak state as a result of government lacking a deep and thorough understanding of the country's needs. He made these remarks during a discussion with Buddhist clergy in Piliyandala.
Leader of the Sarvajanabal parliamentarian Dilip Jayawira met with Venerable Professor Kotapitiya Rahulathera, the Deputy Chief Prelate of the Kotte Sri Kalyani Samagri Dharma Maha Sangha Sabha this afternoon at the Dampetripitaka Mahavihara in Piliyandala.
PowerPoint presentation එකකට මුකුත් ඇත්තෙත් නැහැ. පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී තිබුවා එතනගෙන් දෙන්න උතුමිය බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන කෙටුම් පත්‍ර. එහෙම එකක් නැහැ. හැදුවේ කවුරු කියලාත් නැහැ. ඉතිහාසය කියන එක අර වැදගත් විෂයක් හැටියට හඳුනා ගන්නවා කියන ප්‍රශ්න. දැන් ආර්ථික සමෘද්ධිය නැහැ. ඒකම අපේ රටේ ගොඩනැගිච්ච ආධ්‍යාත්මික සමෘද්ධිය පහත වැටීගෙන යනවා. අපේ හරපද්ධති සහ වේනවා ලුහානියක් වෙන්න පටන් ගන්නත් තියෙනවා. ඉන්දියාවේ අගමැතිතුමා කියලා තියෙනවා මේ ටැක්ස් සීට් 50 ගෙවුවට කමක් නැහැ. අපේ කොච්චර යාල්පන් තිබුණත් අපේ රටේ අනන්‍යතාවය අපි පාව දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා ඉන්දියාව අගමැතිතුමා කියනවා. මේ කාලේ අපේ රටක ආර්ථික වශයෙන් පිළිච්ච කාලයක් වගේ නැහැ. ඒ වුණත් අපි අපේ රටේ විච වටිනාකම් ටික පාව දෙන්න හොඳ නැහැ කියලා මගේ විශ්වාසය. ගැඹුරු රාජතාන්ත්‍රික අවබෝධයකින් තොරව කටයුතු කරන බවනේ මේකේ පේන්නේ. දැන් ගොල් රාජ්‍යක ලක්ෂණ නෙමෙයි මේ ඔක්කොම මතුවෙමින් පවතින. අඳුන දේ තමයි මොන හෝ කොන්දේසි මත රටේ ඉන්න ජනතාව කියන්නේ වගකී යුතු අය මොනවද වගේ කොන්දේසි විරහිතව හරි ඉතු වෙලා මේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න තමයි. මම කියන්නේ ආණ්ඩු කරලා කියලා. නමුත් රටේ වගකී යුතු අය ආමුරු තනගදී යුතුයි මම හිතනවා. රජයේ ජාතික අවබෝධ කරවනවා නම් හොඳයි.
MP Jayawira also visited Senior Professor Venerable Induragare Dhammaratana Thera and received blessings.
The final Randoli procession, also known as the Grand Randoli procession of the Kandy Asala Perahara, is currently enchanting the streets of Kandy. The Grand Randoli procession commenced at the auspicious time of 6:51 p.m. from the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic. The procession heading northwards along the Sri Dalada Vidya, Yatinora Vidya, Kandi Vidya and DS Senanayaka Vidya will return to the temple via Raja Vidya. Thereafter, the Grand Randoli Perahara is scheduled to leave at 1:18 a.m. tomorrow from the Maligaon premises, accompanied by the 4 Devali processions. Meanwhile, at dawn tomorrow, the processions for Devalas Natha, Vishnu, Kataragama and Patini will proceed to the Gatabe Diya Kapana Thota to perform the water cutting ceremony or Diya Kapima. This year's Asala festival will officially come to an end after the custodians of the Satara Mahal Devalas, together with the chief custodian of the Temple of Tooth Relic, Pradeep Nilangadala, present the memorandum on the successful completion of the Perahara to the President at his residence in Kandy tomorrow. With that, here's a look into thoughts shared in the political arena today.
What have they introduced as education reforms? The initiatives that they have proposed are the exact same as those contained in the white paper drafted by Ranil Wickremesinghe. They are simply continuing someone else's work. It is the same with the Electricity Act and the IMF program. Is this why the people voted for this government? We are transforming a country that was declared bankrupt by the IMF and the World Bank. The IMF says the country's economy is strengthening. We were able to institute a rapid transformation in this country. Let us transform Sri Lanka into a country with one of the fastest growing economies in the world. During the recent election, it was claimed that son of a Rajapaksa spent $320 million and launched a rocket which is nowhere to be found. The Prime Minister confirmed today that no government funds were used for that project, but that it was a company that bore all expenses of the operation, which is now generating foreign revenue for the country. They lied, spread hate and brought up large-scale fraud and funds allegedly held in Uganda. They are now bringing up the issue of the satellite, which is going to overshadow other large-scale fraud and corruption. The public was expecting them to punish those fraud and corruption. When they pursue legal action against such trivial matters, the public will be led to believe that they are nothing but politically motivated acts of revenge and that the Rajapakshas were in fact pure. That is not what the people expect. It is not a surprise that the opposition, which is in shambles, is muttering meaningless statements when we are performing our duties according to a strategic plan. The opposition is well aware of its dark future if this situation persists. They can keep dreaming. However, no one can stop this government's journey, which is being strengthened through people-centric measures.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now in your business news, Sri Lanka has received $697.3 million in workers' remittances in July 2025, up from $637.7 million in June. The increase reflects a 9.7% month-on-month growth and continued strengthening of external income sources. According to latest figures released by the Central Bank, cumulative workers' remittances for the period from January to July 2025 is $4.4 billion, which is a 19.5% increase compared to the same period last year. US President Donald Trump, following his administration's decision to double tariffs on Indian imports, said there will be no trade negotiations with India until the dispute over tariffs is solved. Answering inquiries on expected resumption of trade talks in the light of new 50% tariff, President Trump asserted that no talks would take place until a resolution is reached as such. The White House on Wednesday issued an executive order imposing an additional 25 percentage points in tariffs on Indian goods, raising the total levy to 50%. The administration cited national security and foreign policy concerns, pointing specifically to India's ongoing imports of Russian oil. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi responded defiantly, signaling that the New Delhi would not back down in the face of economic pressure. That's all for tonight from First at 9. For the latest developments around the clock, stay in touch with Ada Derana, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.